Poetic peeps and gentle persons, in-betweeners and nonconformers, genders all and genders equal. Welcome to Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. My name is Damien B Donnelly. I have the joy of being your host and producer, and thank you so much for tuning in to episode 15 of season 8, whether that's been on Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts or iTunes. Usually episode 15 is the final episode of the season, but this has literally been a bumper-packed season of incredible guests joining us from all around the world. So we still have a few episodes to go before we reach the end, and today is no different in terms of its fantastic voices, its diversity and its locations. We have an English poet living in Barcelona, an Irish poet living in the Netherlands, an American poet living in, well, America. We will also be heading to Tuam in County Galway here in Ireland, to Gorey in County Wexford, and we'll have a trip across the water to the United Kingdom. We don't have any time to chat today behind the storms, as we are solely focusing on the bloody poetic talent of our bloody incredible stormers. So all that's left for you to do is to sit back down, ensure there's a pitcher of Pimm's at hand, a packet of custard creams, and let these poets transport you from the comfort of your own armchair. My name is Damien B Donnelly, this is Eat the Storms, and I hope you enjoy the show. And for my first guest today, we are heading to Barcelona in Spain and to meet an English poet who I've been a fan of for a very long time, and I'm delighted to welcome her back onto the podcast. She's had work appearing in places like Black Bough Poetry, where I first got to know her, Pop Shot, The Alchemy Spoon, Ink, Sweat and Tears, and was one of our star contributors to the Storms Journal issue 2. In 2022, she won the Hastings Book Festival Poetry Competition, and the following year, in 2023, her first pamphlet, Zoetrope, was published by the wonderful Hedgehog Poetry Press. Joining us today to read poems from that pamphlet, this is Hilary Otto.
Hi Damien, thanks so much for inviting me on to Eat the Storms. You do such a great job supporting poetry and poets, and I've been really looking forward to appearing on the podcast, so many thanks for this opportunity. And hi to everyone listening. The poems I'm going to read today are all from my pamphlet Zoetrope, which came out last year with Hedgehog Poetry Press. It deals with the difficulty we have making progress in our lives, how this can hold us back, and how we can learn to reinvent ourselves and our worlds. I hope you enjoy the poems. My first poem, Hills Like White Elephants, takes its title from an Ernest Hemingway short story that you may know. It features an American couple in Spain arguing over a possible abortion. At one point in the story, the man says, "We can have the whole world, it's ours." To which the girl replies, "It isn't ours anymore. And once they take it away, you never get it back." This is Hills Like White Elephants. One look at the landscape shows that something is wrong. In all our views, the same subject. Me, me, me. Stories about exotic lands once painted a picture so beguiling that it became real. A stripping of detail into a hazy snapshot with safari helmets. We understood new places via the algorithm of our imaginations. We could only describe someone else's hills in our own language. We became more of ourselves in more countries. Our heads grew statues from their bases, settled on grey plinths and planted heroic stances on the soil. We carry these statues on our backs. We plant them at every crossing, name our streets for men who made it into stone. The hills are in captivity. A zoo animal staring through bars, pacing the dust and tossing its trunk, sweat flecking its back like vowels. My next poem is a true story from a summer trip to the river with my friends when I was 16. It was published in the Blue Nib, and it's called Dinghy. Beside the river, no one but 4 schoolgirls, sparks of gorse fringing a shingle beach. We laughed for what seemed like hours, just pumping rubber to plump the boat so it was hard. Then off 2 rowed, slowly marooning us. The steady splash relaxing, so we laid out, despite the gravel brands on our backsides. At once, a man was standing on our slip of shale. We turned on hearing speaking, or did he speak on seeing turning? "Do you mind if I sit here?" he said, and sat. 1 minute passed, then he was wearing nothing but a thong. In unison, in mirrored shades, we checked his height, his mass, his weight, and lay quite still, not fight nor flight, but stiffness. And when we saw he'd gone, we didn't speak of him or where he was, but strained to hear the sound of oars, and planned the way to run while carrying a dinghy. I wrote this next poem after finding out that dung beetles are the only insects that are known to be able to navigate using the Milky Way. This stuck in my mind, and when coupled with this idea of them being a little bit like Sisyphus with their big balls of poo to roll around all the time, it resulted in this pantoum. It's called Scarab's Got Talent. As I rolled on that stinking ball towards the dawn, the night sky shone its universe on my back, but my legs buckled. I wanted to be much more than this. I wanted to be the one to watch, to be Beetlejuice. The night sky shone its universe on my back with a purpose, to reveal my destination. I wanted to be the one to watch, to be Beetlejuice, to rise from the dust and start to move again with a purpose. To reveal my destination, I dreamt in star trails. I wanted to dance to new tunes, to rise from the dust and start to move again. While my lovers slept in their steaming beds, I dreamt in star trails. I wanted to dance to new tunes. I needed to find a new route and walk it with grace. While my lovers slept in their steaming beds, I was lost and alone on overcast nights. I needed to find a new route and walk it with grace, heaving the grubby burden of existence. I was lost and alone on overcast nights, while a kaleidoscope of ancient light streaked past, heaving the grubby burden of existence. When the clouds cleared, I stared in wonder, while a kaleidoscope of ancient light streaked past. That smudgy galactic stripe drew my path when the clouds cleared. I stared in wonder at a clotted vein which bulged across the sky. That smudgy galactic stripe drew my path as I rolled on that stinking ball towards the dawn. My last poem is about a common, almost cliched symbol from the arts, the blackbird. I wanted to use that familiarity to explore the theme of memory and recurrence. And blackbirds improvise actually when they sing, so that was the perfect image for me to express how we can use small changes incrementally to break out of scripts or vicious circles. Here's Blackbird remixed. After R.S. Thomas, the Beatles, and all the other blackbirds. Shadows deepen on the grass. Privet stalks the lawn. The day is damping. It's time for me to gather up and go inside. But one bird reboots the evening, and one woman becomes a young girl. I linger by the indigo hedge and rewind because of the song that you string in the air. An old standard, remastered, in snatches of ever more daring licks. As you forge new riffs from each refrain in your jazz solo, you reinvent yourself in all our spaces. I'm squinting up through layers of years, retreating into dusk. The music delivers us past memory and place. Wherever I am, your song returns me to the beginning. The soundscape you create reverberates inside long after your outline has faded. Shock this darkness with your brilliance. God knows we all need to hear a good tune. Remind us to settle on the high points. Inspire us to release our melodies relentlessly against the failing light.
Next up, it's time to head to my former hometown of Amsterdam in the Netherlands for an Irish writer and poet originally from County Monaghan. She has been writing since a young age, but only started submitting to publications 2 years ago after coming in second in the Surreal and Strange Poetry competition run by Litro magazine, judged by poet Jose Hernandez Diaz. She has been drawn to the intimacy of the form of prose poetry, the way it taps into the subconscious, weaves a narrative and then transcends it. I am delighted to welcome to Eat the Storms for the first time the co-founder of Strange Birds, a global writing community. This is Derville Quigley.
Hello, my name's Derville Quigley and I'm a writer from Monaghan in Ireland, and I'm currently based in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Thank you so much to Damien Donnelly for inviting me to read my poems on Eat the Storms podcast. It's a pleasure. To act, we must be confident. We were brought to the cinema for the all-hands meeting, given popcorn and 7-Up. The CEO, a small man whose catchphrase was, "Act like a CEO," took to the stage. We were good, but not good enough. Still had a lot of work to do, targets to reach. I wasn't sure if we'd ever get there. Afterwards, I was asked what I thought about the video played at the meeting. The one about rowing? Yes, how we're all part of a team striving to row in sync with each other. The office was no rowing boat. We didn't have broad backs, gelled hair, or wear singlets. Mendelssohn was not the soundtrack to our lives. But there were at times high winds, strong currents and vortices, colleagues being sucked under the surface, desks left empty except for headsets, half-eaten energy bars, and a few shriveled cacti. I needed to call the heating company about our Banjax boiler. Sonia was waiting on a sperm donor. We stared out the window towards the HomeFit car park. I wanted to tell her the donor will be a great match, that I hoped it would work first time. I don't care for rowing. To Act, We Must Be Confident was first published by Trasna in spring 2023. The men in the sauna. Wash your body. Shower. Take off all the salt, the excess skin, loose hairs. Wrap yourself in a warm towel. Walk to the sauna. Sit with 5 men, naked, on your towel. Close your eyes. Inhale through your nose the intensity of fire. It can get hotter. Let the heat blast your racing thoughts into nothing. Forget you are naked. Forget the men in the sauna. They are not looking at you. They are letting the heat blast their thoughts. One sits up straighter. Another breathes as deeply as he can. You scald your nostrils every time you breathe in, blasting those thoughts of the men in the heat in the sauna. The Men in the Sauna was first published by Forge magazine, spring 2023. Toothpaste, hot chase. I stepped off the bus and a giant green tube of toothpaste followed me. It's not because you've yellow teeth, it said. Okay, then what? It's because you're a good listener. I felt played. Who says that if they're not after something? My teeth felt furry, like I needed to brush them. I had a lot on my mind. Earlier that day, during a means test for a loan extension, my bank manager asked if I had hobbies. Badminton. I love badminton. I lied. I didn't want him to say, play less badminton. Stop playing badminton. I didn't get the loan extension because I couldn't cut corners. The toothpaste caught me on a bad day. I didn't have the bandwidth, so I moved to the other side of the road to start afresh, minty fresh. Toothpaste Hot Chase was first published by Hidden Pig Press in 2023. Mrs. Hasty's geese. We swung into Hasty's yard in our Datsun Bluebird, holding the car door shut with baler twine. My granny swapped soap with her during the war. Neighbours lent on neighbours then for survival. When I was born, she had reached out, offered beestings from their finest cow, but my mother from Tullamore, a young nurse, declined. It was unpasteurised, its properties unknown. This time I was 8. We were there for her eggs. Rapping the iron knocker on the door, her dog going ballistic, drawing her up from the belly of the house to greet us. "Stop it," she'd say in a quiet, hoarse voice, but he didn't listen. Her grey hair bobbed around the corner. She needed her glasses to see us, to take our order, to get to the hens, past all the geese in the shed, their white necks swaying in anticipation. She counted 6, 8, a dozen, and my mother paid her with thanks, knowing those eggs were worth more. Years later, while stood amid the bustle of Rosemary Street, Belfast, the smell came to me, a mix of bleach, poultry and sweet pastry, conjuring the flourish and movement of the woman in my hand, her skirt swishing against the wind, white sheets billowing on the line, daffodils trumpeting on the lawn. A smell I would lean on to bring me back when office politics and angry emails get the better of me. I dream of being one of Mrs. Hasty's geese. Mrs. Hasty's Geese was first published by Raffinant Press in 2023. Thank you for listening to my prose poems. I hope you enjoyed them. My name's Derville Quigley and you've been listening to Eat the Storms podcast.
And my next guest is another first-timer to Eat the Storms. He's a poet based in Tuam in County Galway. And speaking of Galway, it was in this county, in Charlie Byrne's bookshop to be precise, that in 2022 his debut collection was launched called After Them. You're going to hear poems from that today, from this graduate of the MA in Writing programme at the University of Galway, whose short story Cool was awarded the Dublin City One Book Prize by Joseph O'Connor back in 2010, and since then his work has appeared in places like the Irish Literary Review, Skyline 47, Crossways Literary Magazine and the Galway Review. He has read at festivals like the Listowel Writers' Week, the Strokestown Poetry Festival, the Kirch International Festival, and has completed residencies at the Tyrone Guthrie Centre and the Attiles Creative Centre in Finland. Joining us today for the first time in Eat the Storms, this is Jimi McDonnell.
I'm going to read 4 of my poems and introduce them by title. This is called Don't Come to My Reading. You wear a chain around your neck, counsellor, with all respect, don't come to my reading. Does your name end with TD? That seat's taken, leave it be, don't come to my reading. This lovely room has musty floors. Writing this stuff is a chunky chore. You'll meet my ego at the door. He'll ask, what are you here for? Then say, don't come to my reading. A poet's life is delicate, but it's the best I've found, and yet I'm freaking out about a candidate. Don't come to my reading. Electioneering comes and goes with noble claims and pukey prose and tacky leaflets. Please keep those. Don't come to my reading. Public service is a calling. Promises are kept by stalling. Thanks for your speech. It was appalling. Don't come to my reading. My fierce rage is fierce selective. I try to put things in perspective. Thanks for indulging my invective. And please, keep coming to my readings. This poem is called Ross's Point. The sea surrounding Ross's Point was clear. It's crystalline to me as I sit here. Sligo sang the newness of your touch. Strange solos soared and were never long enough. Did Pearl Jam sound better, or was that just me? Vedder's voice roared, but the bass played softly. Love, what I hear now is too much bird song, an avian chant where the words are wrong. Of course, it sounds amazing too. I won't be getting maudlin, nor lament the spring. We met last autumn. Summer is a new thing for us as this, gathering momentum like a folk song, a new one for Eddie, who taught me to sing when I was ready. This poem is called No Music Please. Preheat your oven to 180 degrees. Cook your food well, but no music please. Drink irresponsibly till 11:30 at least. Gather outdoors, but no music please. Get stuck in traffic, stock up the Jeep with cheap shit and plastic, but no music please. Catcall a woman? They'll leave you in peace. Open season for primates, but no music please. Meet friends, absolutely. You're on day release, but no laughing and dancing and no music please. Support a musician. Email your TD. Discord sounds amazing, but no music please. This poem is called Do One. The child of Prague can do one, and the ghost of Abraham. I'm not a wayward boy, I take no joy in saying so long, sham. And the beard on Padre Pio is not a sacred thing, and neither was I when I said sublime to a temporary king. My legs are sitting, lotus, but don't invest too much in Buddha leaning, longing, or a book as a prop, as a crutch. And I've seen obscene revivals. Where I've gone, I've gladly strayed. But their edifice of rotten stone and ugly gold will neither stand nor stay.
And from the west coast of Ireland, we are crossing that Atlantic Ocean and settling down in the United States for an artist who was named the State of Texas Beat Poet Laureate for 2023 to 2025. Her recent publications include Maintenance 17 and 18, New Generation Beats, Setu, Harbinger Asylum, Voices, Dahlias, Gods and Mermaids, and her books include Blue Rooms, Black Holes, White Lights and Left Hand Dharma. Her new collection is called Full Moon Midnights and it was published earlier this year. In 2020, she founded a show called Gas, Poetry, Art and Music, featuring interviews, readings, performances and show art in a video format, which you can find on YouTube, and the links to that are available on today's blog post. Her art has been featured in places like Flora Fiction, north of Oxford and Chrysalis. Joining us again for the first time today on Eat the Storms, I'm delighted to welcome Belinda Surbraman.
Hi, this is Belinda Surbraman. You can find me on Twitter, Belinda Surbraman. You can find gas, poetry, art, and music on my YouTube channel, Belinda Surbraman, and my blogazine under the name Gas, Poetry, Art, and Music, as well as Facebook group. Hope you check them out. I'll be reading from Full Moon Midnight, my new book out from Roadside Press. I will just start at the beginning and we'll see how it sounds. Writer's block. Like a frozen hell of winter nights, no home, no blankets, no words. Gravestones stare from the amorphous chaos of loss. A feathered serpent hibernates, refusing to move. It thinks and dreams, remembering snow and the welcoming of fire, illuminating shadows. A loving memory cracks the ice, and warmth blooms from the inside. Your smile reflects in a window. Gratitude will save you. Valentine's Day. Love is a light, bright scarf in the wind. A hat losing itself to the streets, the inner flap of your loose jacket shining, nature tossing your hair in my face, kissed with a tease of spring and stamen, buzzed with coexistence with bees. I salute our flavors, our multi-tongued love, respect for creation, our various hues of artistic expression. Love is realizing it was always a test. Every second counts. Everything lasts forever. And everything changes. A mist lifts and gifts a rainbow. Insomnia again. In these insane times, I tell Alexa to play rainforest sounds, and she does. The 4K TV plays the war on Ukraine. A tyrant threatens a nuclear plant, while some politicians cheer him on. We're killing what sustains us with singular egos and loss of connection, creating dramatic times, living in a pandemic on the edge of war that could wipe the earth of its human infestation. Nature will win. New life will rise from our ashes. "4 a.m. and no sleep. I tried forest sounds, including a stream and an owl. I tried happy TV, traveling, remodeling, other animals in their habitat. I tried counting breaths and soft music. I tried acupressure and the mantra, be here now. I tried silence, and the static was deafening. Pills aren't working. My reoccurring depression blossoms in a toxic reality. I tuned in to World War III, thinking avoiding it was not working, and that didn't work either. Over 3 million refugees from Ukraine have run for their lives. My heart races for them. As my body slowly disintegrates, and the world as we know it explodes and burns. Annihilation a possibility. Night is too dark for sleep. Anyone else awake? 2 a.m. In every war, women and children are killed. Hospitals and schools are bombed, while the opposing side claims it held weapons of war. Let's pretend war is precision and polite in its killing, and a crime only happens when we notice the truth. Meanwhile, thought manipulation goes unnoticed. Price gouging is shielded by blaming the presidents. Media continues to sell us whatever they think we might buy with persuasion while bombs land closer to a nuclear plant. And threats of long-range missiles are made. News repeats scenes of destruction between commercials of what we don't need now and never did. I can't be poetic about war. I can write about the pain, the blood, the killing, the explosions wrecking lives forever. The heart-torn screams of mothers holding dead children, the blood and entrails spilling from bodies dead or dying, the search for food in bomb fields and empty stores, the dazed and wounded, wandering, homeless. I can write about the fear of all things ending before its time, the horror of invasion, terror without provocation, the proclaiming a reason while spouting propaganda, shielding hate with greed, the taking of everything a country holds dear, the taking of a country, the lack of compassion, the making of a hell on earth for the sake of vainglory. Bodies be damned. Spring 2022. The pandemic is waning, but still present. Now the threat of World War III blossoms before spring. Evergreen, mesquite, and cacti are unchanged as I learn more friends are dying. The still bare trees are pregnant. Weeds are already here, but green and flowering. I leave them and love them for now. Each year, spring is more important, to see the brown and withered wake up, to know that everything lives again. Thank you for listening.
My next guest is from here in Dublin and is no stranger to the podcast and even to the Storms Journal, as she was one of our star contributors. Her work has appeared in places like Poetry Ireland Review, the Irish Times, the Four-Faced Liar, the Poetry Bus, Under the Radar, the Waxed Lemon and Washing Windows 3, to name but a few. She was the winner of the Adult Unpublished category of the Trócaire Poetry Ireland Poetry Competition in 2021, has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and had 2 chapbooks highly commended for the Fool for Poetry Prize in 2022. Her poem Mountain Spine is currently part of Poetry as Commemoration Jukebox installation at the Irish Museum of Modern Art. I am so pleased to welcome back to Each the Storms, Sinéad Griffith.
Thank you, Damien. It's great to be back on Eat the Storms. This first poem came from a Poetry's Commemoration workshop with Victoria Kennefic, where we looked at how language can be used as an instrument in conflict. At the Poetry as Commemoration book launch, designed and printed by the Salvage Press. the night before rioters set Dublin alight. I'm at Molly for the launch of Grief's Broken Brow. Ache to stroke the finished book, glide it from its slipcase, inhale the pulp of fresh pages. But it's guarded under glass, under the elbows of poets whose work breathed life into the archives last year, when conflict seemed more like history. I content myself with a glass of white, view the book printer's video on loop, watch the compositor hand-pick a metal alphabet, set it letter by raised backwards letter. From case to stick, she makes lines of type that slide into the bed of the letterpress. A jigsaw of pieces ready to be inked, the slow skill of the printer's craft. Guardian of the books, my father worked in the printing trade his whole life. Lately, when I visit, he might slip me a volume for safekeeping. He taught me that Gutenberg was a goldsmith first, the weight of paper and ink, how binding gives spine to a book. So I always check the colophon, who printed the proofs that were checked, double-checked, free of mistakes. While news reports aim to stifle the Dublin violence, online rumour is a wildfire. I'm reminded that we must pick our words. Take care who we let spell out the difference between we and they. My next poem was first published in Skylight 47 and looks back to the primary school teacher who encouraged our class to write. Nancy O'Connell teaches her class to write. Nancy chalks the board, hoists her bust, self-hugs, tells us longhand will forge our place in the world. From now on, block text is deemed subversive. We are to advance to pen and write in cursive. A's, so many were fit to burst for a B. Weary wrists struggle, the tripod grip is key. She has no mind at all for our complaints, be it paper cuts, cramps, calluses, strains. With arm and elbow trigonometry, we compose fledgling essays, poetry, inspecting loops, flicks, curves, twists. By God, but she'll leave us with elegant script. Friction of pen over page sparks 30 girls to the possibilities of joined up words. My next poem, first published in Under the Radar, looks to life with teenage children. This is my poem, Fondue. Her tongue has been a blade all day. Slammed exits test the kitchen door. I angle the butcher's knife. It will be slow food tonight. We gather around the cauldron. Watch cheese melt to change form. Dip bread. Swirl figures of 8. Spear tender meat piece by piece. Our sticks stand circling the flame. No crossed forks. Etiquette dictates. And finally, on a similar theme, this last poem was first published in the Comerford broadsheet. This is Grounding a Teenager. Backlit, brown eyes spark, her fingers charge to keep pace with umpteen screens. I seize the mobile, lead her outdoors, task her to replant red geraniums smashed by last night's storm. I watch her hands slip into gloves of soil, the cool earth calm her, till soon she plays pat and shape with garden clay, thumbs down roots. I imagine the generations harboured in compost, hands that might reach up, guide her as she tilts with the geraniums to face the April sun. Thank you, and thanks again, Damien.
Now it's time to cross over to the United Kingdom for another first-timer to Eat the Storms today to hear from a writer of poetry, short story and creative non-fiction. She is the author of several books and pamphlets, including Unfurling, which arrived in 2022 as a response to COVID lockdown, connecting the inner world with her love of nature. Her poetic sequence of personal transformation, Lure, was broadcast on BBC Radio 3's Behind the Ears programme and is now available on Sounds app. Today she's going to be reading from her latest collection, Thrift, which was published by Pacewell Press, which considers the earth and its vanishing creatures. I'm delighted to welcome to Eat the Storms today, Alison Lock.
Thank you to Damien for this opportunity to read on Eat the Storms. My name is Alison Lock and I'm talking to you from North Wales. I'm going to read from my new collection entitled Thrift, published by Pacewell Press. Thrift celebrates the natural world, not just the beauty of this small, resilient plant, but also the other meaning of the word thrift, and is a call for us to take care of the resources we have left. The first poem is called Melting Iceberg, and was published by Ink, Sweat and Tears and nominated for their monthly Pick of the Month. It's no good looking at a shooting star with a fly trapped in your eye. You hear the yawn above the skin tide, mewling and popping like a carved whale, while you spell out the words mastodon, saber-toothed tiger, giant bear. But this is mammoth, humongous, too enormous to contemplate, at times quiet, sometimes mute. You stare through the classroom window, watch dust as white space slides from frame to frame. There have been many poems inspired by the tragic story of the RMS Titanic, and I feel a tentative connection as my grandmother used to tell the story of how she and her friends waved to the great ship as it left Queenstown, now Cove, on its way to its destiny. But apart from any sentimental connections, shipwrecks are a source of marine pollution, damaging ocean habitat with their contents, their cargo, and their fuel. And this poem's called Wreck. Sublingual, she rests on sand as brine licks the bow that plied above her ice-block skirts, now anchor-chained. Her engines flooded as she flailed in the freeze of infamy. Her collared flange unribbed, propellers left to languish in their tongues. Her name still on our lips, as anaerobic spit eats through her first-class rooms, a bathtub of rusticled decay. The next poem deals with a climate catastrophe that happened in the 19th century. Possibly the largest volcanic event in history was caused by the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora, sending sulphur and ash into the atmosphere, leading to winter-like temperatures during the following summers, and severe crop failure across Europe and the Northern Hemisphere. 1816, the year without summer. On Mr. Turner's canvas, the sun sets, sap green, cadmium yellow, smudge umber. Mount Tambor's magma risen, molten ash and dust block out the sun. Mary Shelley incubates her Frankenstein as spectres roam the ruined fields, crops rust. There is no harvest. The call to revolt is bread or blood. As snow falls in flakes of burnt sienna, the artist's palette records a climate cursed. 2022, a year with summer. It's hard to believe in extinction, but here we are, communing in slow grief, watching tulips in gardens open their cups to the burning sun, as we drive by on a highway, turning down the drone to discern the melody of songbirds. This favourite song of mine brings grief along with its melody. Blackbird singing in the dead of night after Lennon-McCartney. In the undergrowth the sub-songs hang, their sadness for the hurt of broken wings. On blackest nights we hear the rouse of medieval hours within a pie baked blind. Behind the scaffold of a pastry trap they wait, as diners clap, to see those 24 beaks break through the crust, their flight wings open flung to find a dish of dainty fruit. Again I listen to the intro, how 4 chords dwell in undergrowth, how sub-songs hang their sadness for the hurt of broken wings. Monarch butterflies travel great distances from Canada to Mexico, where they are important cultural symbols. Their arrival coincides with the Mexican Day of the Dead, where the butterflies symbolise the return of the souls of the ancestors. In Britain, they are a rare immigrant, occasionally seen in the southwest. This poem was first published in Reliquae, The Monarch of Mabon. The fields reflect the cumulus pattern of cloud on the blade-cut silvered soil, our second harvest. All is still. On the road rolls neither car nor tractor, but there is movement in the hedgerow. A butterfly lands. The monarch has arrived after her long flight. Black-veined wings delineate her shape as she grazes on the milkweed. A long-tongued bumblebee gathers nectar from the sun-loving foxglove. We hold our breath, knowing that when evening comes, we are drawn towards the moon, as are the moths released from the hands of Mabon before the campion's final bow. And now the title poem, Thrift, first published in One Hand Clapping. She is running, skipping towards the granite headland, where a mighty fall of rock is the only boundary between land and ocean. A child running far ahead, her hair as gold as a cornfield, anorak the blue of sea. She is at the edge of the cliff, with the dwellers of the sea slopes, bird's foot trefoil, sea campion, squill. Wavering heads catch her eye. They look so fragile, but they are the tough ones, resisting the Atlantic winds that gather the salt spray, sweep along the cliffs, scouring all in their wake, leaving only the hardiest, stonecrop, sea spurry, vetch. The path is narrow. She is an only child of 9 years of age, alone and yet wanting to be more alone, for the world to be her and sky and cliff, to be surrounded by sea pinks, buffeted by the elements, cradled in thrift. I hope these poems suggest a reaching out for a new wisdom and potentially a more hopeful future. That's all from me. Thank you for listening, and to Damien for inviting me to read on this podcast. Goodbye.
And just like that, it's time for our final guest, who is joining us from Gorey in County Wexford here in Ireland, though he's originally from Dublin. He is a spoken word performer and was shortlisted for the Caterpillar Poetry Prize and recently won an award from the Red Books Poetry Ireland for his spoken word piece, The Perils of Poetry. He admits that he is a reluctant poet who has long fought against the poetic urge, but thankfully for us, he lost. Joining us today with 3 spoken word pieces for the first time on Eat the Storms, this is Stephen Comerford.
The War Outside Our Window by Stephen Comerford. Get them out! Get them out! 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 Mama shuts the window tight, but still we hear them shout. Ever since the war started, our lives have been filled with fear. We thought we might get some relief when we got to here. Dad told us he would see us soon and that we shouldn't worry. We were going to have a big adventure, like characters from a story. He said we'd get to meet new people and see a new country. We'd get to see what life's like there, get to laugh, play and be free. We asked, what if the people there are mean? What if they are cruel? What if they stick their tongues out at us and don't talk to us at school? He just smiled and said, people will always be kind to kids escaping war. So Dada, please explain why there's a mob shouting outside the door. They've been at it for hours now. Have they nowhere else to be? Don't they have better things to do, like spending time with family? Could it really be their intention to make my mama weep? To cause such an awful racket that my baby sister can't sleep? Fist clench, I walk towards the window and then stick my head out. At first, I'm not sure what I'm doing. Then I start to move my mouth. We didn't ask to come here, I bellow at the top of my voice. But when it started raining missiles, we didn't have much choice. Just why are all you people out there making such a fuss? Why are you so loud and angry? What's it got to do with us? Mama places her hand gently upon my shoulder and whispers, hush, my dear. They're just a bunch of silly scared people whose hearts are ruled by fear. And still they shout, get them out. The volume gets higher and higher. All this chaos reminds me of the gunshot sounds, reminds me of the fire. It reminds me of the explosions we heard which shook our beds at night. My head starts to get a little dizzy and my chest, it feels too tight. I stumble back uncertainly from the window, then throw myself on the bed and try to block the ugly noise out with a pillow on my head. Time passes and things have quietened down now that it's getting late. It seems like they're satisfied. They've had their fill of hate. I wonder when they get home and greet their husband, wife or kid. Will they act proud, their chests puffed out as they tell them what they did? How they terrified small children who were fleeing from a war. How they filled my mother's face with dread, bawling their self-righteous roar. Do they think that they are heroes? Does it really make them feel good to go spreading anger and confusion around this neighbourhood? Is this really the kind of country where they want their kids to live, where spite and pettiness are the currency and no one can forgive? Where little children have to cower and hide from an angry crowd? Where ugly lies become the truth if you shout them out loud? And as their brain continues to fade, I wonder who to pity more. The angry people in the crowd or the people back home trapped in the war. A bombed house can one day be rebuilt. The lives lost we will mourn. But who can rebuild a destroyed heart that's poisoned with hatred and scorn?
Goblin by Stephen Comerford. Your mates slap your back and say that you're some lad. Helen McEntee's on TV, she says you're a scumbag. Middle Ireland's mask slips, dog whistles the truth. How they see you as subhuman, A useless, dumb brute. Doesn't matter anyway. Fuck it, who cares? It's not like you follow current affairs. And you've known what they think ever since you were 10. When you got bet by the Gardaí, then again and again. Middle class anxiety, moral panic and fear, embodied by a state-sanctioned slap to your ear. So you smashed up Arnott's, the whole gaff got fleeced, you were Canada goosed, now you're Canada geesed. Was it about foreigners? You're really not sure, but smashing up shit holds a certain allure. When you're angry, young, lost and confused, when you've been ignored and neglected, despised and abused. So you live the image they give you and act like a goblin. You found your vocation. You're a professional problem. Rent Day by Stephen Comerford.
Press my ear to the wardrobe and listen as you cried about how you once had wings and flew, flapped, flied, and how those days have ended since your feathers got deep fried. You needed consolation. What could I do? I lied. Sat you down in the kitchen and brewed a pot of tea. Said, man, you still soar like an eagle. Beautiful, wild, free. Then washed down my deceit with some scalding Rosie Lee and reflected that in hindsight and all that shite, spiking one's landlord with acid just isn't right. Thought I could cure his capitalism with Karl Marx and LSD. He'd abandoned the profit principle and reduced the rent for me. But as I sit here, I reconsider the wisdom of my plan and tenderly wipe away the tears of a middle-aged, middle-class man. Now I'm feeling exhausted and it's getting dark. So I lure him into my car boot and drive him to the park. And as I drag him from the car, he looks up so gratefully. I get caught up in the moment and shout, "Run, boy! Now you're free!" Thank you very much.
Now, as usual, before we go, I'm going to leave you with one poem, and I feel I should leave you with a poem from the new collection, Back From Away, just published by Tourist Press. This poem may be from the new collection, but it originally began in a workshop at the Doolin Writers Retreat back in January 2020, when I just arrived back in Ireland, way before we had any idea of what it meant to be locked down or an understanding of social distancing. I want to say a huge thank you to Jessica Traynor, who was a workshop facilitator in Doolin, where this poem first took flight. And then later, Jessica became my mentor while working on the actual collection itself. This is called In Consideration of What to Praise. Let us praise the sun, returned. Not rush to bash the dishes in the sink, at the sound of how much he's grown out from the grip of marigold. Everyone should be weaned before the world leans in with its nipple. Let us praise this burial, the adieu to anti-agony and the misery of her fleeting ecstasy. The swift seduction of tide returned, tampered by the claws crab when he'd swim back out. Cord had been cast, but tie had not been cut. He only wanted to test the depth of an ocean beyond the chokehold of that shallow sink, to draw his own reflection on the shiny surface, not pre-prepped by someone else's opinion. Let us praise now. Sun returned, tucked down in the back room, once her room, their room, never his, not even when the sea was a sealant to any suggestion of being free. So, Let us praise the sun and his final return, and all those sleepless nights as her snore rattles through the walls he swam back to. Poetic peeps and gentle persons, in-betweeners and non-conformers, genders all and genders equal. We've reached the end of another episode of Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. My name is Damien B Donnelly. I've been your host and producer, and I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of my sensational guests on the show today, and they have been Stephen Comerford, Alison Lock, Sinéad Griffith, Belinda Surbraman, Jimi McDonnell, Derville Quigley and Hilary Otto. As always, for details on all of my guests on the show today, you can head on over to the website, eatthestorms.com, click on the podcast section called Listen to the Podcast, and there you will find a blog post for every episode. This was episode 15, season 8, and there you will find bios, photos, social media handles, so you can find, follow, and be fantastic fans to all of my incredible guests on the show today. Thank you, of course, to you, the listeners, who are tuning in and keeping us on our toes, keeping us sharing our loves, our woes, our poetic words. And of course, as always, you can tune in on any platform you like, including Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts and iTunes. A reminder once again that later this summer we'll be opening submissions for the Storms Journal, our printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, currently supported by UNESCO Dublin City of Literature. We will have a very special themed issue this year, so keep your eyes and ears open on all our social media platforms and on the website. This is a podcast, so you can tune in whenever you want. However, if you have tuned in today, that is Saturday the 25th of May, you might like to know that tomorrow on Sunday the 26th of May at 7 p.m. GMT for an hour and 20 minutes, I'll be having the international launch of my new collection, Back From Away, just published by Tourist Press. I'm going to be joined by some incredible poetic peeps who will read alongside me. It kicks off at 7 p.m. and, as I said, runs for about an hour and 20 minutes. If you have time, sit back and join us in the comfort of your living room on your own Zoom screen. And with that, I'm off to prepare. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Damien B Donnelly. This has been Eat the Storms. And until next time, be bright, be bonny, be brilliant. And most of all, most importantly, ensure that you stay